What's up, guys? This is Stevan Micic, and I'm here with a really exciting video today. Today, I'm going to be making a tier list of the 50 states of the United States of America. That's right, I'm ranking the 50 states in order of who's the best wrestling state to worst. Remember, guys, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and notification bells on. The ONEV giveaway for the hoodie from honoring my 1-year YouTube anniversary is coming in the next 2 weeks. The rules are in the description below. All you got to do, subscribe to the channel. Follow my Instagram, Stevan Micic, links in the description for that. Follow ONEV.world, link in the description. Let's get into it, guys. Basically today, with this tier list, we'll be ranking the 50 states. Here are the criteria for me ranking. First of all, top states where, kids are converting to wrestle Division I and winning medals, whether it be NCAA All-Americans, NCAA champs, going on to make world teams, world medals, etc. So kind of having that depth for where these hotbeds come from in the long run. Second, I'll be looking at how difficult all these states are, where kids are winning in national tournaments, where are these kids from, where are these rankings in the country coming from. And third, how difficult each state is, to win a state title, because that's really important as well. So those are my criteria for ranking. And on top of which, I don't want you guys to be too critical on it. Some of the states I'm not knowing. Maybe I'm more biased than others, but this is my tier list. This is for me. You might have different opinions, you might rank them a different way. So be patient and be mindful with that. With that being said, we're going to start from A to Z with the states, and then so you understand how we're doing the tier list. We got S tier is obviously the highest up, your high quality, high profile states. A tier is very good as well, and B tier is a notch under here. So these are our top 3 tiers, and then under that, because there's a lot of difficulty to rank and not knowing what the states, I've kind of put a C tier and D tier kind of combined by the region. So I've got Midwest, Mid. This is your Midwest states that aren't as good, but this is a good geographical region. I think it's also East Coast Mid. We've got that going underneath it, followed by West Mid, and then South Mid, because I think South probably is the weakest out of all the regions. And then underneath we've got freezing for Alaska and Hawaii in the pink tier, because I think both of those states aren't connected, so I'm going to put those in those 2 tiers just to give you a heads up. So let's get into it, guys. We got Alabama first on the list, and I'm going to have to put that in South Mid. I'm not really sure. That's kind of like a D tier state. I'm not sure if the South doesn't have the best number in wrestling, so there's going to be a lot of states there in the South that go, and Alabama's one of them. They don't have a Division I program. I'm not sure how much D2, D3, NIA, JUCO they even have, so, they might not even have high school wrestling for all I know. Alaska, like I said, freezing tier for them. They do have some really cool wrestling programs, and there are some people that come out of there, but it's just they're not getting that competition, being so spread out, competing with other states, and that's kind of what it is. Arizona, I'm gonna have to move up. I think Arizona is kind of in the A tier, maybe B tier, maybe high B tier, maybe low A. Arizona definitely is a competitive state now. Wrestling's being pushed a lot more there. It's close to California. It's definitely one of the better states out west. I'm gonna move it to B tier, but I might move it up to A tier as we move along. Arkansas, I'm gonna move that in the South Mid as well. Some of these down here, I'm not gonna order what's better than the others. I'm just gonna place them. California, this is gonna be our first S tier state. Why? First of all, California is a huge state. It's known for its wrestling. Tons of kids come from California that wrestle in Division I, and there's been so many top-level guys from the state of California that go on to make it and make themselves known in the NCAA, in the world level, coming from the state of California. It's got the depth, it's got the population, and then on top of it, there's a category. I'm going to give a little extra love to these 3 states. There's 3 states that only have 1 class system. What that means is California, there's only 1 state champ per weight class, all right? There's not a 1A, 2A, 3A class. There's not 3 state champions based off the school size. No, the smallest school will compete against the largest school, and I think that's insane, especially in the state of California, that there's only 1 state champion per state. So California falls into S tier because of that. 1 class state. It's huge. It's got the quality. They've got D1 universities as well. I wish they had more, actually, but California is an S tier state. All right, Colorado. Colorado, I would say, is B tier, definitely behind Arizona. It's growing. They've got some good studs. They're tough. The OTC is based out of there, so some of them get some extra, they're able to wrestle around with some of the guys at the Olympic Training Center, but it just isn't, deep enough, especially with the class system, but it's definitely a growing wrestling state for sure. Connecticut, Some of these, I'm not really too sure about the Connecticut. I'm definitely going to have to go East Coast mid, lower on the tier list here because of the fact it's just New England isn't great, and most of those kids, maybe they go to prep schools that are located in the East Coast, but most of them are from other states. Same with Delaware, East Coast mid. DC region, I don't know much to it. I'm going to put that in East Coast mid as well. It's just too tiny to give up anything else. You know, Florida's a B tier state. It used to be better, I feel like. I mean, Florida has a good wrestling culture for being kind of isolated down south. They've got good high school in wrestling. They just are kind of like isolated, like I said. They don't have Division I school. So kind of like being able to move out of state is kind of has to be that, and nowhere near. So I feel like a lot of kids just choose other outdoor sports, kind of being warm all year round, and it just isn't that. I know like the program like Brandon used to be phenomenal, one of the best known programs in the country, being like going, I think like 1,000 matches or dual meets undefeated. They had this documentary on them. They were crazy. I know they have Lake Highland Prep now, but just isn't what it used to be. You know, nostalgia Florida used to have. They have a good high school culture, but it's B tier. Georgia, definitely going to go south mid, but probably one of the better schools, better states comparatively. Georgia's, you know, they've got Atlanta as a big city, and there's some wrestling there. It just isn't, you know, comparatively to some of these other states. There's 50 states here. It's just the South is just probably on the weaker end for the wrestling region. Hawaii, we got the Aloha, baby. Here we go. They're down here. They're known for combat. They're just not. They don't have the wrestling like they do in the rest of the states. Idaho is in the B tier for sure. I think, you know, they're growing. I mean, it's probably a fight between Colorado and Idaho. I'm not really sure who's better. I might lean a little toward Idaho, knowing they have, you know, Suples there. They've got, you know, Ivanov. He does the Greco-Roman program. There's a lot of good Greco and freestyle guys coming out of his area in Boise. My uncle, fun fact, my uncle actually ran his black belt jiu-jitsu. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He ran his jiu-jitsu academy out of the same place as Suples in Boise. They have a good relationship. We're a small world. You know, I think Idaho's, you know, building with wrestling. There's some good wrestlers coming out of there, and that's why I would give it B tier. It's, you know, for being out west, it's still a good state, and you know, comparatively. Illinois. Now we're gonna get to some of the Midwest states, the I's. We have Illinois. Illinois is another S tier state, and I'm gonna put it above California. Why? Because I just know the depth of Chicagoland area is just phenomenal. You know, it's such a big metropolitan region with high-level wrestling. Yes, there's a 3-class state, but it doesn't matter because all these kids competing from 1A to 3A are going wrestling. So many going to D1. Wrestling in the Midwest, wrestling, competing in Big Ten wrestling. And then on top of it, you just have so many good wrestlers that came from the Chicago area making world teams for the USA, competing for other countries. You name it, Chicago's jam-packed with some of the best kids clubs. You had Overtime at one point with Bormet. You have Izzy Style. You have the Harvey Twisters. You have Gomez Academy, Suplex Academy, Muhammad Chatayev and the Russians, you know, up north. They're just stacked, and you know, some of the best kids clubs in the country coming out of there. And then, you know, Region Wrestling next door in Northwest Indiana that kind of completes the Chicagoland area with wrestling, and Akron up north in Wisconsin. That area is just a hotbed. So Illinois, S tier. Indiana. Now I'm gonna have to go on a little rant, but Indiana is definitely an A tier state. Now, you might be like, why Indiana? I think Indiana's a little underrated. You know, I'm going to be kind of the testament for it. First of all, you know, Indiana maybe doesn't have the depth fully for the state, but the champs that it produces just can go on to the next level. And Indiana might be one of the best states per individual in the whole United States because of just the quality of wrestlers that Indiana's developed over the years. You know, first off, it's a 1-class state, and so there's only one state champion in Indiana. On top of which, so that gets bonus points. On top of which, Indiana is just one of those places, you know, where you have guys that are multiple-time state champs that go on to become NCAA All-Americans, to break records, be NCAA champions, make world teams, win world medals, win Olympic medals, become world champion, and become, you know, Olympic champions. Like for example, I'll give you this. You know, just alone in Northwest Indiana, you've got Angel Escobedo, national champ, world team member, 4-time state champion. Jesse Mendez, 4-time state champion, national champ for Ohio State. Andrew Howe, Wisconsin, or national 3-time state champ, national champion for Wisconsin. You know, runner up to Jordan Burroughs. Also, you've got Jason Surtsis, national champion, 4-time state champion in Indiana, national champ for Northwestern. You know, you have me, who's a world champion for Serbia. Just alone in Northwest Indiana, along with many other D1 wrestlers and All-Americans that have come from the program. In Indy, you've got Reese Humphrey, who came from there, world team member, NCAA runner-up. On the girls' side, or Mason Paris from Lawrenceburg, he is a 3-time state champ, NCAA champ, Hodge Trophy winner, and world bronze medalist and Olympian. My teammate at Michigan. Girls, you've got Sarah Hildebrandt, Olympic champion, coming from Mishawaka, Penn. Kayla Miracle, world bronze medalist, 2-time Olympian. I mean, I can go on for the individuals' talent that's come from here. World champs, Olympic champions, NCAA champs, you name it, comes from Indiana, and we're one class, baby. Don't sleep on us. Iowa's next. I think Iowa has probably one of the best wrestling cultures. I just don't see, I think they're probably one of the best wrestling known states. It's just hard for me to justify when you see guys going to national tournaments and competing at going to wrestling college, how many of these guys are actually from the state of Iowa winning for Iowa or Iowa State. A lot of these kids are move-ins coming from other states competing for Iowa, Iowa State, Northern Iowa. I just feel like the organic growth doesn't move as well and perform to where they're NCAA Americans as a state like Indiana does. So maybe Iowa is a tougher high school state to win. I don't know, but I think they don't have that next level talent that many of these guys are. A lot of the guys that you think of that wrestle for Iowa or Iowa State, they're not actually from Iowa, and it's kind of weird to think about because of how big of a wrestling culture the state of Iowa has. So for me, Indiana is still above Iowa, but Iowa is still an amazing state and probably has one of the best wrestling cultures in the country. All right, let's go through some of these other states now. Kansas, probably going to have to give it Midwest. I just think they just don't have the depth that a lot of the other Midwest. It's comparing a lot with Midwest being one of the best regions in the country. Kentucky, same thing. Gonna move that to Midwest. Maine, East Coast mid. Louisiana, South mid. Massachusetts, South mid. Maryland, you've got here. Maryland is definitely a good state. I would definitely put it on the higher B tier, low A tier realm because for how small Maryland is, it's in also a very wrestling rich area. You've got that whole DC area. I know I put DC in East Coast mid just because we're only talking about little DC, but in reality, Maryland and Virginia, DC, this whole region is just filled with a lot of wrestling talent. It's very good. So I'm just going to kind of move it the DC area. I'll move that up there with Maryland because they're kind of in one itself. This area has got a lot of wrestling. A lot of top guys have come from Maryland. Kyle Snyder, Helen Maroulis, Meyer Shapiro, Kurt McHenry. You've had so many very, very good wrestlers. I probably forgot a lot, but that's from just my personal knowledge of Maryland. It's just a compact area. It's not very big. It just, it definitely is growing, and it's part of that like East Coast meets Midwest area. So Maryland, you can't sleep on them, and they're up there in the B tier. Now Michigan, I'm going to give the lowest A tier. It could fall B tier, but I just think Midwest wrestling is so solid, I'm going to have to move it up to the A. Michigan is a 4-class state, and I don't really like that. It's just a little bit too spread apart where there's 4 state champs per weight class. I think that's a little bit much. And also, you just don't see the talent as much going out of state. A lot of people are going to Michigan State, Central Michigan, or they'll wrestle smaller divisions, or they just go to University of Michigan if they're good enough, if they stay in state. So I just feel like the recruiting, and I do have I just think that they have, Michigan has a lot of great wrestling families, the Amin family, the Massa family, the Simmons, Facundo's. There's so many good wrestling families that have come from Michigan. I'm probably forgetting a lot of them, but in general, I just think, Michigan has seen better days, but also I think there's some improvement that can happen in Michigan. I have a bias a little bit for Michigan going to the University of Michigan. The backyard talent compared to other states isn't as great. And I see, Michigan, the Wolverines are recruiting not as much in their backyard as they are in other states. So that just kind of goes to show. Minnesota, I'll probably put a little bit above Michigan. They kind of have that same problem, but they used to be amazing, especially where Apple Valley High School you guys have probably heard of. An insane wrestling high school. I just think they've fallen off the block a little bit. They've fallen off the mark of what they used to be. Back in the day, when I was a kid 10, 15 years ago, I would have put them in S tier 100%. And I just feel like Indiana is risen to the occasion, and Iowa and Minnesota have a little bit shaken a little bit. They've fallen down a little bit. States like Maryland have risen up, Arizona have risen up. It's just Minnesota is not what they used to be as a wrestling state. Now let's go into some of these other states. Mississippi, South mid. I'm going to knock out some of these ones. New Hampshire, East Coast mid. Montana, West mid. New Mexico, West mid. North Dakota, West mid. Vermont, East Coast mid. Wyoming, West mid. South Dakota, West mid. Alright guys, from there I think we can kind of build and kind of actually have a little bit of a narrative now that I've cut some of that out. Some of the states, sorry guys if you're from there watching, I apologize. Don't come at me too hard. Missouri. Missouri is definitely up there. I think Missouri is an A-tier state. I think they're really good for a Midwest, kind of like that area. Missouri is always really good. I don't know, I would maybe put it somewhere here. I'm not sure if they're better than these states. Maybe somewhere maybe above Michigan or around the same quality as Michigan. You know, just because they have St. Louis, they also have like Kansas City. It's kind of divided up there. It's just a really wrestling dominant state, especially with Mizzou being in that region. There's also good kids clubs like Perler. Is one of the best kids academies as well. So I think Missouri is always a really good wrestling state. They're definitely A tier. Nebraska, I feel like just isn't, you know, it's out there like with Iowa. They just don't have the wrestling culture as much. They do have Nebraska University, and there's a lot of good culture there. It just isn't, you know, I could probably put it somewhere in the B tier, maybe a little above Arizona and Idaho before it starts getting west, but behind Maryland, I would probably say something like this. Nevada is probably the best for the West Coast mid. As much as I'm including them in this tier, I just think, you know, there are some good, the Goldmine, that academy is really good right now, and they're growing. So there are some kids from Nevada that, you know, you can't sleep on. Just the West is a little bit behind, the East when it comes to wrestling, and there's only a couple states that really put that through, like California and Arizona. So Nevada will be up there, probably the next quickest. All right. Jersey goes ahead of both these teams and is going to hold the top spot until another state comes in. And that's because New Jersey is powerhouse. It's packed. It's a tiny state, but it's packed with wrestling. And on top of which, New Jersey's the other state, the third state I was talking about, with only one class of wrestling. It's a one-class state. Only one state champ per weight. And they are just, I'm telling you, man, New Jersey, so many champions, world champions, Olympic champions. You know, legends in the NCAA have come from New Jersey. So, plus they're in a hotbed, you know, in that East Coast area. New Jersey, watch out for them. They're always a top state for wrestling. New York, for as much as you'd think, it isn't as tough comparatively to the others, but there are some good wrestlers from New York. You know, Yanni's from New York, and Vito are from New York, and Long Island has really good wrestling. They just aren't, you know, compared to, you know, New Jersey, and even compared to some of these other states, they just don't have the depth, especially also having, I think, a lot of classes. I think there's 3 or 4. So I'm going to have to put them at the end of the A. I don't know if they're even as good as Maryland. I might put them above them, or Nebraska. They've got good wrestling. They just don't have the depth through it thoroughly, and they don't have the talent just coming year per year from New York, you know. North Carolina, I'll give in the B tier. I think they've got UNC, they've got NC State, all within a really close radius. Growing in general, I think the colleges definitely are better than maybe the state is itself, so that's why I'm putting it at the end of the B tier. But it's definitely better than a lot of these other East Coast, these C-ranked and D-ranked states, so they're up there. Ohio for me is S tier. I think I'm going to put it between, it's going to be better than California, but I'm going to put it behind New Jersey and Illinois. Because Ohio is a wrestling-rich state, maybe has some of the best wrestling culture. High school-wise, they've got still some of the most prestigious schools, St. Ed's, St. Ignatius, Massillon Perry. You've got schools, Perrysburg and Toledo. You know, you've got, it's just spread out between the state really well. The Cleveland area, the Akron area, the Toledo area, Columbus has got Ohio State University, and then on top of it, you have the Cincinnati region. So it's just, wrestling is just there. And then next to which is, you know, Erie, Pennsylvania, which is between Cleveland and Pennsylvania. So that's just such a hotbed of wrestling in Ohio, and you know, you can't sleep on them. They're one of the best states. They have the high school narrative. They have guys going into college wrestling and even making world teams. So overall, they're just awesome. I think a fun fact, I believe St. Ed's had like some 35-year streak of wrestlers going to college, and St. Ed's had an NC All-American from college that graduated from their high school. It was like 34 or 35 years. My college teammate, Dom Abinator, was the last guy actually to, before the streak broke back in 2019, to All-American for a university that came from as a St. Ed's alum. Crazy fact. Next, we've got Oklahoma. Oklahoma also, a great wrestling state. They just aren't, you know, an S-tier state anymore, but they've got a lot of good high schools like Broken Arrow, some high schools in Stillwater as well. You know, having Oklahoma University and Oklahoma State both being, you know, 2 of the best wrestling colleges historically. They're up there. They're A ranked. They just aren't. Maybe it was what they used to be, but they do a good job. I mean, a lot of tough kids are from Oklahoma, so it's definitely an A-tier state. I put it. I think maybe it's above Missouri. I'll put it there. So they're good. Now we're at our big dog, our number 1, Pennsylvania, PA. the best state in the country for wrestling. Pennsylvania's got the numbers. They've got the talent. They've got the most Division I universities per state. Penn State, UPenn, Drexel, Clarion, Pitt, Edinburgh. I can name so many schools I can name. Pennsylvania, I don't really even have to explain how deep it is. It's the hotbed. It's where everyone's recruiting from. It's where everyone's looking to Pennsylvania to see who the state champs are. All the kids are performing at national tournaments. They just go from youth to high school to college to international, and that's just what it is. Pennsylvania is that state. So enough said about the number one, the pound for pound state is Pennsylvania. All right, Rhode Island, East Coast mid. South Carolina, South mid. Tennessee, South mid. Utah, sorry, Cale Sanderson, West mid. Washington, West mid. Oregon, also West mid. West Virginia, I don't really know where to consider what region are they. Are they East Coast or are they Midwest? I'm gonna put them in the Midwest because I haven't really filled that tier up. Virginia's a really good wrestling state. Virginia also, you know, that whole area over near like Arlington, DC area. That area I believe is pretty good. Fairfax, I'm not really sure, but I know that whole area is very good in Virginia, so I'm going to give them B tier. I think they're kind of up there with Maryland. I don't think it's as good of a state just because it's a larger state, so I'm going to put it behind Maryland, but definitely above New York and the rest of those B tier schools, or B tier states. The last two we've got Wisconsin. It's tough to put them in the A tier with the rest, and I'm not sure. I'm going to probably put Wisconsin at kind of right here, right below Idaho. They just aren't as deep for the Midwest staple, but I don't know if they're as low as the Midwest, you know, the C tier. So I'm putting them there. And last but not least, I know I went out of alphabetical order, but Texas. Texas is a cool state. It's large, it's really big, and it's a growing wrestling state. I would definitely put Texas it's definitely not in the South mid. It definitely isn't in the A tier. I'm gonna probably put it also in the B tier. So we're gonna move Texas up here. We're gonna move it behind some of these other states, maybe behind Idaho or Wisconsin. We'll move it right here to the middle of B tier. And so that's it, guys. This is what it's looking like. Our S tiers have got 5. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Illinois, Ohio, California. Those are our top 5. The rest, our A and B tier, are still really good states. Maybe I'm a little bit biased toward Indiana, but I think, you know, it's hard. Maybe you might not think Indiana, but name a state besides these S tier that are better than Indiana. It's tough if you compare it. So especially with the champs coming out of the state at the moment. So, but other than that, let me know what you guys think about my top 5, about my S tier list. What else we would change? Who's the number 1 state? Who I'm not showing enough love? Comment below. Thank you for being here with me. World champs and everything we do, baby. Let's go.